a tweet a day right now
Yes.
coming from a high profile person echoing what the president himself said, which is that America is getting rich by American businesses being taxed more. I cannot believe the political party of supply side economics is falling for this utter nonsense.
Yeah, it is a bit jarring to see the White House. I saw, I believe, it was a tweet from President Trump just maybe earlier today with a chart of the escalating monthly tariff inputs. And of course, those that are cheering on these tariffs, they continue to deny the economic reality that it's American families and businesses that are paying the tariffs. Right? The whole entire mantra is we have been getting ripped off from these free trade deals, and now we are forcing these foreign companies and foreign governments to pay us to be allowed to sell their products here. And we're beginning to see, of course, that that's not the reality. A lot of the earnings reports that are coming in now, including I did a write up on General Motors just the other day showing that as General Motors tried to absorb some of these tariff costs, their net income fell by 40%. There's very little buffer left at many companies to absorb the costs of these tariffs themselves, especially when you operate on a 5 to 10% profit margin, as many automobile manufacturers do, as many grocers do. There's very little cushion to absorb the entire cost of these tariffs longer term. And anecdotally, I was talking to my sister-in-law the other day. She's a financial officer at a clothing company, a non-publicly traded clothing company, and I was talking to her about this problem they're having. And some of their senior leadership, they were under the false notion that they could get vendors to absorb a third to one half of these tariff costs. Guess what? Those vendors aren't absorbing a single dollar. The entirety of that cost is being passed along. And to give you an example, the blue jeans have gone from 59 bucks at their firm to 69. Their net income is now sliced by nearly in half. And there's going to be some serious repercussions to follow now with American employees. And my fear is that there's been a delay in really feeling the impact of this because businesses were able to stockpile inventory, but the pain is going to become acute in the coming months if these tariffs are not rolled back.
Well, and one thing I would add that I'm not sure I've spoken about a ton here in the Capital Record, but I've written about and spoken about a great deal in my investment oriented work with Dividend Cafe is that when people are saying the cost will not get moved on to consumers, and I fully accept the idea that various products have different elasticity than others, various price elasticities, that some costs are easier to move on than others. That is not a good argument for tariffs. What we are saying in that case is good news. The consumer won't see a price go higher because company profit margins will go lower. And company profit margins drive hiring, wage growth, factors of production, capital investment, um, what we on the right have historically referred to as the sources of economic growth. So we kind of are in a pick your poison mode here, where there's either an impact to the consumer on price or a declining corporate profit. And in both cases, they strike me as being extremely anti growth and anti prosperity and anti productivity. And that's the part I can't wrap my arms around. If we said this is a matter of crucial national security, which some particular components are, um, then I don't really see tariffs as being a solution because I don't really want to get paid to compromise our national security either. But then what I found out from the Trump administration was no, in fact, what we're doing to resolve our differences with China is a deal where we're going to sell them more semiconductors and they're going to sell us more rare earth minerals. We're going to become more dependent and more coupled, not decoupled. I almost feel like the people should be most upset are not those who have held on to free marketeer orthodoxy, guys like you and me, but people like, for example, Kevin Roberts at Heritage tweeted out, we're headed to total decoupling with China. And I feel like a lot of the guys that have been defending the Trump administration have been left out to dry by what the administration's done. They've undermined their thesis. They've said, we're going to fight for domestic manufacturers, then turned around and said, but we're giving carve outs, waivers, exemptions to some of the key manufacturing industries. I cannot really understand who's supposed to be happy here other than those on the left who really like more government revenue. There at this time seems to be more government revenue, but as you know, there can't be more government revenue unless the trade is happening. And if the trade is happening, then that means that no domestic industries are being protected whatsoever. So I'm at a loss, not only as an opponent of the policy, I'm at a loss as to figure out who exactly is supposed to be happy.
No, and lost in the shuffle on all of this too is the rule of law. And I'm one who recognizes the threat that we have from China, but the way that we address that threat is very crucial. When we're engaging in now a trade war with China with indiscriminate tariffs placed on all exports coming to our country, that's an enormous tax hike. But then you double down with partial nationalization of Intel without congressional authorization. And of course, we're talking about socializing pieces of the means of production as a mechanism to counter China, supposedly. And number third here.
And by the way, when you say all exports from China, my understanding is Apple's exempted, right?
Yeah, there's a sweetheart deal for now in place for Apple. I don't know how that happened. Uh,
Yeah.
something about the swamp. But we've got these two instances, right? Tax hikes on the American consumers, partial nationalization of Intel, and the third related component, shaking down NVIDIA in order to allow them to continue exporting sensitive technology to China. We're going about this the wrong way, and we're violating multiple statutes and violating constitutional order in the process.
Well, I guess then the good news is that there's a bunch of money coming in that they can rebate to the American taxpayers. This, again, speaking to the sort of internal contradictions of the ongoing moving arguments. Well, on one point, we're told we're going to reduce the deficit a lot. And then now there are those advocating for the idea of taking tariff money and rebating it to the American taxpayers. You've had some thoughts on this idea, besides the total inconsistency and incoherence. Maybe give listeners a little further unpacking as to why this rebate idea is so comically absurd.
Well, sure. Well, this all goes back to several months ago when President Trump piloted the idea of potentially giving Americans maybe a personal check as a portion of all the tariff revenue that has been collected. Well, Senator Hawley, the supposedly a Republican senator from Missouri, decided to run with this idea, actually came up with a piece of legislation articulating how this supposed redistribution of tariff revenue would occur.